Committee on Audit, come to order. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Killeen, Commissioner Kniezek, Commissioner Clark-Coleman, Commissioner Dobb,
Here.
Chair Basham.
Here.
You have a quorum present.
Next item.
B, approval of the February 26, 2020 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Been moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Next item.
C, unfinished business. There is none.
Next item.
Item D1, under new business, communication from Wayne County Auditor, Legislative Auditor General, forwarding the Office of the Legislative Auditor General's performance audit report on the Wayne County Register of Deeds controls over cash receipts.
I'd like to welcome our Auditor General, Ms. Cora, and her staff and her guest.
If we have the guests, if they could join us at the table and introduce themselves, I'll introduce myself and the staff will introduce themselves. Marcy Cora, Auditor General.
Will Hamner, Audit Manager.
Crystal Thomas, Supervisory Auditor.
Regina Lee, Senior Auditor.
Can you hit the green button there?
Good morning, Bernard J. Youngblood, Wayne County Register of Deeds. To my right is Barbara Johnson, my Chief Deputy, and to my left, my CFO, Jenny Wright.
Well, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Please proceed.
What you have before you today is the Office of Legislative Auditor General's performance audit report on the Wayne County Register of Deeds controls over cash receipts. And I'm going to turn it over to the audit team, and they'll go through the presentation.
Yes, Will Hamner, Audit Manager. We conducted a performance audit, as Marcy indicated, to assess the control environment over cash receipts at the Register of Deeds office. We had two objectives. One was to assess the effectiveness of the cash handling procedures, including compliance with policies, ordinances, and resolutions, and also to assess whether cash and checks were being properly handled to safeguard them from loss and/or misappropriation. Our scope for the engagement was October 2016 through July 31st, 2018. Again, for the engagement, our procedures primarily consisted of walkthroughs, interviews with the management, review of documentations, analytical procedures, as well as observations. For the engagement, we determined there were 11 areas that could be enhanced as far as the control environment was concerned, and we had 29 recommendations to enhance those areas. Two of the recommendations were considered significant deficiencies, which are medium risks and may require management to look at those in the near term. And 9 were control deficiencies, which were deemed low-risk type deficiencies. Management did agree with 26 of the 29 recommendations, partially agreed with 1, and disagreed with 2. Management's comments have been incorporated into the body of the report. Just some of the background information for Mr. Youngblood. The Register of Deeds was established in 1836 under the first Constitution of the state of Michigan. The Register serves as the library of land records for the county. They maintain an index of land transactions dating back to 1703 with archives of over 50 million documented images and abstracts. The Register of Deeds is the only elected officer authorized by state law to record, index, and maintain land records. The office is comprised of 5 divisions. During our scope period for the fiscal years 2017 and 2018, collected fee revenues totaled over $7 million per year. The daily fees recorded within the Register of Deeds office is recorded through a proprietary system, the Tyler Technologies Eagle Recorder computer system. And again, it's used for all of their financial transactions recording, which are subsequently then recorded within the county's general ledger. For the engagement results and a synopsis of the report, I'll turn it over to Crystal and Regina.
We can start on page 6 of the report, slide 7 of the PowerPoint, reconciliation of the Tyler system. We assessed the accuracy of the cash receipts process. We sampled 16 days of transactions over a 18-month period, or 2 per quarter. Based on our assessment, we determined that the ROD did not establish adequate internal control policies and procedures to reconcile the accounting records to amounts posted to the bank and the Tyler system. We were informed that the ROD Chief Financial Officer responsible for recording financial transactions was hired in January 2017 and indicated that they did not gain a full understanding of the ROD transactions recorded within the J.D. Edwards and the Tyler software until the summer of 2017. Unreconciled differences can be found on page 7 of the report. We also determined there were unreconciled differences between the bank polling report, which shows the redeposited checks, and also not performing timely reconciliations. As a result, the ROD is at risk of misstating revenue and incurring revenue losses on unmonitored, rejected checks remitted for services that were obtained. We recommend
Commissioner
management.
Dobb has a question, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the ROD Chief Financial Officer not having the full understanding of the transactions, what was the reason for that?
Thank you, Commissioner. First of all, as a trained not in accounting, I appreciate the opportunity to have our audit committee come in and give us the professional guidance that is required within our office. For 20 years, since I have been the Register of Deeds, we have complied and I believe had a very good audit. This particular one was unusual. And your question, Commissioner, as to why the individual who came in January did not have the background immediately required to perform this in compliance with what the county wants. I guess I would have to say that was my deficiency in that in hiring the individual, there was an assumption that the individual had been with the county for so long and had been exposed to many, many years of this type of accounting. When the individual came into the office and reviewed our systems and talked to my individual who they were going to replace, I thought they knew exactly what they were going to be doing. And in a very short time, it turned out that the individual needed more expertise in the daily operations. And so the working with management and budget to get him with that expertise just did not come on as quick as possible. And shortly thereafter, the individual decided they needed to leave. So the individual had been replaced even before we got this audit report.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Please proceed.
Okay. We recommended management of the Office of Register of Deeds, establish policies and procedures to ensure that all cash and check receipts reported on the Tyler Daily Journal summary are reconciled to the daily polling report. B, perform a monthly reconciliation of cash and check deposits to the monthly summary journal. C, record detailed data on all rejected and redeposited checks to be used during the monthly reconciliation process. D, develop a user-friendly step-by-step procedure manual with instructions on how to perform daily and monthly reconciliations to assist new and current ROD employees. E, develop and assist of Tyler support, a reference manual to be utilized by management for the reconciliation process, and ensure Tyler system and J.D. Edwards training is provided for assigned managers responsible for performing the monthly journal entries and general ledger. Management agreed with this recommendation. With permission of the chair, I would like to turn it over to Regina.
Sure.
Thank you. Untimely journal entries can be found on page 8 and 9 of the report. We determined the Register of Deeds monthly journal entries, preparation and authorizations were not adequately segregated, and entries to the general ledger were not always recorded in a timely manner. Specifically, we noted the sampled monthly journal entries were prepared and authorized solely by the ROD's Chief Financial Officer.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
For the month of January through May 2017, journal entries were not prepared and entered into the county's general ledger until the month of June 2017, resulting in a $147,565 ledger balance in the deposit and transit account at month end. During the month of October 2017 through July 2018, we noted that the debt account did not always result in a zero balance at month end as stipulated by Management and Budget's cash receipt policy number 14,000. Escrow deposits in the Register of Deeds debt account received from title companies for future services were not always recorded as a liability for the county in the unearned revenue account. Failing to record all cash receipt transactions timely and accurately appears to have resulted in revenue not being recorded in the period it was earned. In addition, because debt account transactions were not properly reflected in J.D. Edwards for 6 months, revenue and liability accounts may have been over or understated in the general ledger during this time period. We recommend management within the Office of the Register of Deeds in Recommendation 2018-02, which is a control deficiency. A, establish procedures to ensure a secondary person is preparing the journal entries and the CFO is authorizing the journal entries prior to month-end processing. B, establish policy and procedures to ensure a deposit in transit reconciliation is conducted monthly in order to adhere to Management and Budget cash receipt policy and procedures number 14,000, as well as to ensure the timely recording of revenues and liabilities in the general ledger. And C, process escrow journal entries to ensure revenue and liability accounts are recorded in accordance to GAAP. Management
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Management agreed with the recommendation.
Okay. Commissioner Kleen had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Register.
Good morning,
Thank-
Commissioner.
Thank you for coming here today. We don't always get the primary showing up for the audit, so thank you very much for showing today.
Well, it's always my honor to be with you.
And happy St. Patrick's early. A couple of comments have been made in here about a little short on the fiscal staff. Just out of curiosity, do you utilize any management and budget employees that are charged back, that you get charged back for, or are they all strictly, because we have in a lot of departments, we have management and budget people, you know, that work in those departments, and then it's a chargeback situation. Do you have that?
No,
over
I
there?
don't believe we have. I will defer to Jenny Wright, my CFO, to answer that, who's been with the county over 18 years, I believe, and has a full background in accounting and has taken over and done a marvelous job since July.
Good morning. No, we don't use M&B services at all. We're totally self-contained as far as finance. Since this report did come out, we have expanded our staff, and I see no problem
Okay,
complying
yeah, I
with
was
this.
just curious, you know, because M&B is shorthanded as well. And so I didn't know that if you were utilizing services, that's one of the things that entered into the equation. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Please proceed.
Improve internal controls over receipt corrections process. This can be found on page 10 and 11 of the report. We review the voiding and correction of transactions and the controls over this process. We were informed each cashier has the ability to correct their daily transactions without approval as long as the correction is within the same day. Based on our review and assessment of 7 months, we determined the following: 25 cashiers, 3 supervisors, managers, and the information technology deputy prepared a total of 448 receipt corrections, or a monthly average of 64 receipt corrections. The number of receipt corrections per cashier ranged from 1 to 26 transactions per month. We assessed cashiers that worked 5 out of the 7 months and determined the average number of monthly receipt corrections ranged from 1 to 9. The dollar impact. We attempted but were unable to quantify the dollar impact of receipt corrections prepared over the 7-month period. And the reasons for this is the receipt corrections report does not always indicate the dollar amount of the corrected transaction. In addition, the comments provided by the cashier on the report did not contain enough information to explain the correction and quantify the corrected transaction amount. We were informed the receipt corrections report is not reviewed on a daily basis to monitor the type of transactions corrected and the dollar impact, but was used to review cashier performance. Recommendation 2810-3, significant deficiency. We recommend management within the Office of the Register of Deeds establish written policy and procedures limiting cashiers' delegated authority for correcting cash transactions and exemption of fees, and require a secondary review and approval for all cash corrections and fee-exempted transactions. B, use the receipt correction report at minimum monthly to monitor and assess the impact of the corrective transactions and/or implementing corrective actions. For instance, additional training. Document the analysis and corrective action plan established for cashiers with numerous transactions corrections. Management agreed with the recommendation.
Ms. Cora has a
I just
comment.
want to add to this issue that was found in the Register of Deeds. I don't believe it's solely just the Register of Deeds. In the external audit report last year was one of the issues they had with the Treasurer's Office. Voided transactions weren't getting properly approved prior to the voids taking place. So I believe it could be maybe even a countywide issue, so it's not just the Register of Deeds.
Thank you. Please proceed.
So at this time, Chair, I would turn the portion of the report over to Ms. Crystal Thomas.
If I could direct your attention to page 11 of the report, or slide 13, establish policies and procedures for surplus revenue. We know that the Register of Deeds established a miscellaneous surplus receipts account that includes checks remitted over the dollar amount due to recording documents. The remitted amount has to be less than $25. Anything over $25 is refunded to the customer. Based on our review of the surplus revenue, it appears that the account is being used to offset shortages during the monthly reconciliation of the deposit in transit DID account. As indicated by M&B Policy 14000, county departments and divisions are responsible for reconciling their DID account monthly to zero. We indicated the following deductions from the surplus revenue account during fiscal year 2017. A check for $58,501 was rejected on November 17, 2016. During the November 2016 monthly DID account reconciliation, the surplus account was used to offset the check. However, we know that the check funds were collected at a later date. Although the transaction balance, the surplus account was initially used to offset the shortage for the return check. On February 17, 2017, the Tyler system recognized an $8,110 shortage due to a cashiering error in which the cashier overlooked entering the amount of checks collected during the day when balancing their drawer. However, the checks were included in the bank deposit. Surplus accounts was used to offset the shortage.
Commissioner Coleman has a comment or question.
Just a question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is that normal procedure to have an account a surplus account that would offset in the event you have a shortage?
Through the chair, Commissioner, I believe that would be an M&B question on, because they had to have that established by management, management and budget had to be part of that decision-making process. It's a general ledger account.
Oh, okay, all right.
We can speak with Matthew Dubay, and we can get back to you on that.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Okay, we found no evidence the journal entry was reversed. Therefore, it appeared ROD cash position is overstated. We also noted that $5,406.15 for banking and credit card fees were deducted from the ROD bank account from October 17 through December 2017, which should have been recorded as an administrative expense. However, the surplus account was used to offset the fee deducted and increase cash. ROD administrative expenses were understated. Based on the journal entries noted above, it appears that management is using the surplus revenue account to offset shortages in order to ensure the month-end journal entries balance. We recommended management within the Office of Register of Deeds establish internal control policies and procedures for recording the use and monitoring of the miscellaneous surplus receipts general ledger account, and establishing a process to review the accuracy of all automated entries by Tyler into the overage and shortage accounts. Management agreed with this recommendation. Okay.
Goes back to me.
Permission of the chair, I would
Sure.
like to turn it back to Regina.
But thank you. Improve internal controls over escrow direct bill accounts. This is found on page 13 through 15 of the report. We assess the internal controls over escrow and billed direct billing accounts. Escrow customers remit deposits for future services to be obtained. Direct bill customers are billed for services obtained. Our analysis determined the following. We noted formal policy and procedures had not been established for processing and/or recording escrow accounts, deposits, and withdrawals. We found an inadequate segregation of duties over the processing of escrow accounts. A management official responsible for IT functions and assigning administrative rights was also receiving escrow deposits directly and processing journal entries. During the engagement, the IT person was removed from handling day-to-day transactions. Escrow and direct bill accounts were not sufficiently monitored and reconciled to journal entries posted to county's general ledger in order to detect errors in a timely manner. The commercial account agreement provided to our office did not stipulate that escrow customers could perform electronic recordings as a service, although recording fees were being received. Some direct billed users were not remitting timely payments for services obtained at the Register of Deeds office. Average outstanding balance owed over a 13-month period for 8 accounts was $6,532. Recommendation 2018-5, Control Deficiency. We recommend the Office of Register of Deeds Management define and establish formal policy and procedures over the escrow and direct bill commercial accounts in order to segregate duties and establish effective monitoring and reconciliation over these accounts. B, ensure senior and managerial staff that have been delegated IT systems administrative rights to adjust the recording of transactions are not involved in the day-to-day processing of transactions. C, update the commercial user agreement to include the recording of documents as part of the services offered by the Register of Deeds and stipulates the applicable fees. And D, establish policy and procedures to collect outstanding fees owed by local governments and private agencies in a timely manner. Management agrees with the recommendation.
So I have a question to the Register of Deeds or staff. Have you actually internally improved the collection of the outstanding fees owed?
Yes, we have, and we have distributed new commercial agreements as well, as has been requested. And we have taken all of these measures into consideration. And again, we really appreciate the expertise of an audit in any format through the county to make sure that we are following the guidelines that a county of this size needs to do their daily business.
Thank you. Please proceed. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kling?
And actually, my question is for the Auditor General. In the Register's response to this recommendation, 05, and I believe also for 04, he made reference to a new daily balancing process. Now, I know there's always a lag time between you doing the field work and the report showing up here. Is that something that you ran across in your field work, that there is a new daily balancing process, or is that something you're going to pick up in the corrective action plan?
When we go out and perform the corrective action plan, we would be going through that process to make sure that the balancing process is meeting the intent of the recommendation.
Okay. Did you actually see that, or was that happen between your field work and the report getting here?
Correct, between the field work and the report.
Okay, so we'll see it in the corrective action plan then?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Please proceed.
At this time, Chair, we will turn it back over to Crystal.
Sure. Oh, Ms. Cora?
If I could just add something, I know it seems like we keep going back and forth. We did have one individual that was working on this engagement, was supposed to be part of the presentation. She called in sick today, which, we encourage individuals when they are sick to stay home. So if it looks like we're going back and forth, they're trying to cover for that individual too. So I didn't want it to seem like we're
We
just.
won't mention Cora. Thank you. Well, please proceed.
Tracking state and county transfer tax exemptions. This can be found on page 17 of the report and slide 18. Based on our assessment, we determined the Tyler system is programmed to exempt the state transfer tax from eligible transactions. However, we noted the cashiers have to manually click an exemption selection box within the ROD Tyler system to exempt the county transfer tax. In addition, we were informed if a transaction is exempted from the county transfer tax, it is also exempt from the state transfer tax. Based on our analysis, we determined the Register of Deeds Management does not have a process in place to verify the county transfer tax and state transfer tax fees exemptions were valid in eligible transactions, nor the dollar value of the exempted fees. Further, the Register of Deeds Management stated the Tyler system does not produce a report that shows transactions exempted from both the state and county transfer tax. We recommended Wayne County Office of Register of Deeds Management develop a tracking report within the Tyler system to track exemptions of the state and county transfer tax and veterans discounts, conduct a periodic review of transactions exempted from the county transfer tax and state transfer tax to validate their eligibility. Management partially agreed with this recommendation, specifically agreed with A and disagreed with B. Their responses can be found on page 18 of the report.
So, would somebody from Register of Deeds comment about B? Like, my question would be like, does management know how much is being exempted on a monthly basis or not?
How much is being
Exempted.
exempted on a monthly basis? And, defer to Jenny Wright on that?
At this point in time, we don't keep track of that. Upon the Auditor General's suggestion, we can get with Tyler, who is our software. We can ask them to, set up a report and configure that for us. Of course, every time we ask them for a change to their system, there is a cost associated with that. We want to make sure before we spend any money that the benefit's going to be worth what we spend to get that report created.
But I'm trying to get us all to agree to row in the same direction, and so it's a good thing. So I think I'm hearing that we are working in the same direction. Correct? Thank you. Thank you very much. Commissioner Kling.
On that topic, as the same topic as I was looking at this report, and in your response, you said that the verifying of the eligible exemption isn't your authority, it's the state's. And as I looked at this longer, it doesn't look like the state is doing their job at this end either. That it both ends. And I'm not pointing fingers. I wonder if this is just a bureaucratic thing. Does the state need to do more in terms of the oversight of this? I mean, boxes are being checked, exemptions are being granted, and you're referencing the state as the person on the controls on that, but apparently the state's not doing that either. Is there something that needs to happen here in Lansing, Mr. Register?
Well, Commissioner, I don't have the expansive knowledge of how this works throughout the state. If you were to purchase a property from Commissioner Basham, and on your deed you record it's exempt because he is your father or your brother, our staff cannot question that and demand that you prove that family relationship. And so we will process the document as if you are the authority and you would not state something that is untrue. It would then be up to the state to decide and investigate whether or not that was factual.
Yeah, and apparently they're not doing that.
I can't answer that.
Yeah, well, from all appearances, because from my little knowledge, when I get this report, you probably know more about this than I do, actually, even if it's, so it just seems to me like, guidelines are issued in terms of what is eligible, right?
Yes,
But the state's not requiring you to collect any kind of paperwork to back that up.
that's correct.
And then so you, rightly so, right, process the paperwork, and then it goes to the state, and that seems to be a black hole as well. I heard your answer on it, Mr. Register, but it seems like this needs some sort of follow-up with whatever department up in the state, because also, as was just mentioned, I would be curious as to how many dollars it is. I don't want you breaking the bank and spending another, $200,000 a year or whatever you think it might get to get the report. But it seems like we should be able to get that total from the state, from the reports you send up. Or it just seems to me that somewhere in the regulatory environment up in Lansing, it's a loop that needs to be closed. So,
Ms. Coral?
thank you, Mr. Chair.
And the overall intent of this recommendation was more for the tracking report, so there could be some type of internal monitoring. That way you can determine, does it seem for analytical procedures, is it maybe one cashier seems to be provided more exemptions than another? It's just more of an oversight review by having a report. Then we know how much is being exempted. That's what this the intent of the recommendation was.
And Commissioner Clean had one other thing.
Yeah, one other thing. The exemptions here, the cost of those exemptions falls on the state, right? It's not your cost in your office.
Correct.
Which occurs to me then that the state would even be more curious as to whether these things are, because it's a loss of their revenue if they're not checking. All right, thanks, Mr. Chair.
I don't want to get too far off this, but it's funny when Bernie, when you said that, it reminded me of my grandson, and I sold him a new Ford Focus so he wouldn't break down the side of the road going to his first job. And when he went to the Secretary of State to change the title, he was being totally honest, and he said, "My step-grandfather." They did not, give him the same courtesy as my grandson. So they charged him $1,800, which I was trying to avoid, because he said step-grandfather. So we wound up with a big thing, and I talked to Laura Cox, and she has a stepdaughter, and she got all upset about it, and she was in the legislature at the time. It created a whole mess. But he wound up paying that $1,800 for a Focus I gave him, my grandson. But thank you. I didn't want to get too far off, but it's just like it hit me in the head when you said that.
Put your hand over his mouth.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
But anyways, when you said that, it's like,
Right.
so on the register of deeds, if he says my step-grandfather, I wonder if where that would go.
No comment. We
Okay,
would not
thank
do
you.
that.
Please proceed. I'm sorry, please proceed.
Timeliness of state transfer tax. This can be found on page 18 of the report and slide 20 of the PowerPoint. We selected a sample of 5 months of state transfer tax payments for testing. Based on our assessment, it does not appear the tax liability payments are being paid in a timely manner to the state to comply with the State Real Estate Transfer Tax Act. The chart can be found on page 19 of the report. Based on this calculation, over the 5-month period, the Register of Deeds was subject to potential penalties totaling $957,178.66. This calculated amount does not include any potential interest that could have been assessed and added to the total penalty due. We recommended the management within the Office of Register of Deeds establish procedures to ensure the state transfer tax payments are remitted by the 15th day of the month to mitigate the assessment of penalty and interest by the state for late filings. Management agrees with this recommendation, and their response can be found on page 20 of the report. Continue. Okay. Overstated liabilities, this can be found on page 20 of the report. During our review of the Register of Deeds state transfer tax payments to the state of Michigan, we selected a sample of 5 months of the payments for testing. Our testing consisted of tracing all payments remitted to the state of Michigan for the county's state transfer tax payments that were recorded within the Wayne County's general ledger. The charts can be found on page 20 and 21 of the report. Based on our assessment for a 5-month period, we determined the Register of Deeds state transfer tax liability was overstated in the county's general ledger by $39,311.25. We recommend management within the Register of Deeds adopt a secondary review process within their monthly general entry preparation and recording of the state transfer tax, along with other monthly financial transactions.
Well,
Yeah, if I can add to that, while we noted the liability was overstated, by the $39,000, all amounts remitted to the state were correct. So that's one of those accounting issues that could be corrected through what we call an adjusting journal entry.
thank you. Please proceed.
Okay. Management did agree with this recommendation, and their response can be viewed on page 21 of the report. Okay. Improve internal controls over cash receipts. This can be found on page 22 of the report. We determined that management within the Register of Deeds in its day-to-day operation has not implemented adequate internal control procedures to, 1, limit access to daily cash receipts stored in the safe, 2, continuously document and monitor the level of cash held in the safe, 3, change the safe combination on a periodic basis, and 4, assess the risk of theft of the daily cash receipts while being transported for deposit. We recommend management within the Register of Deeds establish policies and procedures related to this collection and deposit of daily cash receipts, to limit access to the safe to 2 supervisory personnel, and create a log to record when the safe is assessed and by whom. Ensure a daily cash count of the safe is performed each morning by 2 managers, supervisors, one of which who does not have access to the safe, and document who performed the count, and also the date it was performed and the cash amount. And also ensure the safe combination is changed periodically throughout the year.
Commissioner Dobb had a comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I know that management disagreed with B of the recommendation, so I just wanted to get a comment from the Register of Deeds on that issue. And why was there a disagreement on that?
Jenny, would you like to discuss that?
We believe that the policies, the procedures we have in place for this right now are enough. We will revisit it and, make sure. However, we have cameras that capture all of the counting of the cash wherever it is. And we always have 2 people doing it. So that's why we disagreed with that.
And if I could add, with our cameras and with the fraud team, we have the ability to go back just about 1 year if there's any type of discrepancy that's brought up to review exactly how that cash was handled that's under question.
Will?
Right, and just to piggyback, Mr. Youngblood, on your comment, as the intent with the cameras are a detective control, so it would be after the fact. What we're recommending is that you implement a preventive control by having the count done on a daily basis. So that's what the intent of the recommendation.
I see. That's certainly something that we can address again and get agreement with you.
Thank you. Please proceed.
At this time, I would like to turn it over to Ms. Lee.
Okay. Preparation of daily cash deposits, inadequate segregation of duties can be found on page 24. To assess the control environment over daily cash deposit process, we observe the process of the cash check balancing and the preparation of the daily bank deposits for delivery to the Wayne County Treasurer's Office. We found a designated supervisor is responsible for balancing the cashier's daily cash receipt, cash and checks on a daily basis. During the balancing process, both the cashier and supervisor initial an envelope containing the cash and checks. The envelopes are placed in the safe overnight. The following morning, the supervisor also prepares the daily cash deposit. However, the initial envelopes are discarded. Based on our assessment, the ROD has not implemented into its daily cash receipt reconciliation deposit process an independent third person or supervisor to segregate some of the cash, check reconciliation, and bank deposit duties. Preparation of daily cash continuation. Not having an adequate segregation of duties in place increases the risk of loss or misappropriation of cash collection. In addition, the lack of supporting documentation to validate the daily cash counts prevents the creation of an audit trail from the time the cash and checks are collected and balanced until they are deposited. Recommendation 2018-10, Control Deficiency. We recommend the Register of Deeds Management establish policy and implement a signature log that would document the validation of daily cash check collections conducted by the supervisor and cashier and produce an audit trail for verification of daily deposits. Management agreed with the recommendation. Okay. Enhanced controls over electronically processed checks. This can be found on pages 25 and 26 of the report. We reviewed the process for the destruction of fee checks electronically deposited via remote deposit capture, which is a deposit transaction system which permits banks to receive digital information from checks recorded as remote locations. The FDIC has indicated identity theft or misappropriation is elevated in the RDC environment as employees have access to non-public personal information, and that is the name, address, and the bank accounts of the customers. Based on our review of the destruction process, we noted the ROD has not established policy and procedures over the retention and destruction of customer checks that contain non-public information. Checks are destroyed every 90 days. The ROD does not maintain a log for checks that are waiting to be destroyed and does not use 2 employees in the check destruction to enhance accountability over the process. As a result of the ROD management use of the RDC and its current retention and destruction process of customer checks, exposure of the customer's non-public personal information to a potential risk of identity theft and misappropriation of non-public personal information exists. We recommend management within the Office of the Register of Deeds implement policy and procedures to A, maintain a check destruction log that is reconciled by a secondary person prior to the destruction date. B, consider destroying the checks more frequently to mitigate potential exposure of the customer's non-public personal information. C, include more than one employee to perform the destruction of checks and ensure the check destruction log is utilized to account for all checks prior to destruction. And D, collaborate with Wayne County Treasurer to ensure retention and destruction policy and procedures comply with J.P. Morgan Chase agreement over remote deposit capture process. Management agreed with the recommendations.
Over,
Okay,
if
over
I
to
may,
Will?
that pretty much concludes our presentation of the report. I would like to applaud Mr. Youngblood and his staff for their cooperation throughout the engagement. You know, it was a pretty long and tedious process. Looking at management's comments,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. Looking at management's comments, they have implemented a substantial amount of corrective action. And again, a corrective action plan will be issued approximately 30 days after this report is received and filed by the commission. So, you know, at that time, we'll be able to look at those corrective measures. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Ms. Cora?
I just want to reiterate what Will said and, thank the Register of Deeds office for, all the cooperation they provided the auditors. As Will likes to say, I hope that we were perceived as value added and that, we'd be used as a management tool to help you see sometimes when a second set of eyes look at your process, we can see things that need to be enhanced with your control. So hope that's how value we provided.
Thank you.
Well, as I stated, I think that's a marvelous tool for us. I do not have that financial accounting background, and when I hire an individual, as I hired one of the auditors that performed this audit years ago, and we certainly had no trouble at all. In fact, there was a beautiful booklet left as she moved on that apparently was not followed. So I apologize to take all your time, and finding these deficiencies will be good for the betterment of our office. And I applaud you for going around to the different departments and making sure Wayne County becomes a better place to live and work.
And if I can, just before St. Patrick's Day, us auditing a Irish Register of Deeds, I know there's a motion by Irish Commissioner that would like to move this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if there is no more questions from the committee, I'd like to get that 30-day clock started on the corrective action plan and move that we receive and file and forward to the full commission.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Next item, Madam Clerk.
E, such other matters as may be properly
Thank you.
submitted before the committee.
There are none.
Public comments.
Is there anybody from the public like to comment? Andy? Okay. Anybody from the public like to comment? Okay, next item.
Adjournment.
Is there a motion? It's been moved and supported. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.